Before we begin, thank you very much to Happy Birthday, Jesus, I Love Chrysler, for joining the Patreon campaign. So, there are unwritten rules when it comes to the Patreon shoutouts. I will shout out just about anything you ask me to, but if it violates TOS, or if I feel like it is exclusive or trying to get me to say something, political, religious, etc., I will chop it down and I will edit it as I see fit. So don't try to do that. This is an inclusive channel. Let's please try to keep it that way. That said, we do celebrate Christmas in my house, and we are celebrating Christmas tonight live on Twitch. I will leave a link in the description if you watch this the night it goes up. We are doing a Christmas one-shot of Dungeons & Dragons with a lot of D&D themed characters, some really silly goofball times. Should be a lot of fun for everyone, so please come check it out. And if you can't, then the VOD will be up on the Gob the Goblin YouTube channel. I'll link that in the description below as well. That'll be up tomorrow. But today, we have something to discuss. I mentioned in a video previously that it's been really hard as a fan of the brand new cartoon to actually get Earthrise toys that are actually worthwhile. Now, there are good toys in the line, but the line itself has been extremely frustrating, with one-step figures for characters that are obviously poor repaints of other toys that don't match, or just a lot of characters like Hashtag not getting proper toys at all. And then there's the scale issue. Because the line focuses so heavily on gimmicky figures and budgeted figures, there's no sense of scale across all the characters. So getting a cast that actually looks correct is nearly impossible, and it didn't used to be that way with Transformers. Across Armada, Energon, Cybertron, Animated, Prime, everyone came out in the sizes that made sense for them. And nowadays, it's all down to gimmicky figures and really cheap figures. And it really hurts the overall brand. It hurts the line itself. It just doesn't make the toys very cool, and it kind of makes the show less cool. So let's do the work Hasbro won't. Let us actually devise an entire toy line for Transformers Earthspark the way it would go normally. Now, for this, we've had this design aligned template in this channel before. However, I have modified it a lot this time. For starters, you'll notice there is no commander class and there is no leader class because there really isn't anything in Earthspark to justify those sizes and price points. I almost decided Optimus Prime should be a commander with his trailer loaded with Wheeljack's drones, but ultimately, it wasn't necessary. And then I thought Titan-wise, literally the only thing that would count is Mandroid's moving castle from the end of from the midpoint season finale. But that's not a Transformer. So we can't really do that. We can't throw that one in. So what else can we do? Well, we can do the main sizes, and we can expand this out. I have actually based this on the distribution layout of Transformers Legacy. So we're going to have a lot of different figures. So I believe it's 6 Core, 6 Voyager, 12 Deluxe, 10 or 12, 10 Deluxe, and then 3 Leader. So we're going to include a lot more. We're going to include a lot. I'm double checking. It's 12 Deluxe. I can't remember my own layout. Okay. But we'll start with the Terrans because they're the ones making this hard. So with the Terrans, this is the best that I've come up with. And even this is so slipshot, and we got to do something about it later, but we'll get to that at the end. The trick here is they're so oddly sized. I mean, like, you see Hashtag in the show. She's the tallest of the bots in the Terrans, but she's still shorter than Bumblebee, even though she turns into an SUV. So what do I do? What do I do? I have to take, I have to take from like current toy lines where you have like, things like Strong Arm as a deluxe, and she's still just a big truck. So Hashtag is going to have to be just kind of shorter than Bumblebee, but also bulked out. We've seen things like that before. Hasbro can do engineering like that. Yeah, another one like Jawbreaker. I kept flipping back and forth. Does Jawbreaker go in Voyager? Or does Jawbreaker go in Deluxe? Because he's bulky, but he's also pretty short compared to the normal size Transformers. I mean, about the easiest thing was Twitch and Thrash at the core class because they are so much shorter. Since they are designed specifically to interact with their human siblings a lot more, they have to be smaller in stature. So we end up with Thrash, who's going to have to be a fairly tall core class, and then more standard core for Twitch, which I think makes sense. We just had, like people are getting Mohawk now from Studio Series, that core class motorcycle. Apparently turned out pretty well. So I'm kind of confident that this would actually work if we want scale versions of Twitch and Thrash and all of their siblings. So this is the best I could come up with. And like I said, we've got to, there are tricks we got to throw in here. There's tricks we got to throw in here just for the sake of shaking this up and actually making this work. But this is where they come down so far. Now, let's go in with the core class. And the core class, there's a little bit of weirdness to it. So the obvious one for core are all of Soundwave's minions. So we do have Frenzy, Laserbeak, and Ravage. Packed in with a bunch of accessories to clip onto them, they could absolutely be core class. I was trying to reserve one just to pack in with Soundwave, because Soundwave might come up to be like kind of a smaller Voyager in this. But ultimately, I feel like this works out. Also, there really isn't many small characters, so if I'm going to match the wave layout of Legacy, I had to have 6. So all 3 end up being individualized. I would like there to be some added play element to them. So one of the things I could remember is when the Laserbeak mold was packed in, was Laserbeak or Ravage? No. I'm going to screw this up. When it was Ratbat had this, like, remember, the last time we did full cassettes outside of Studio Series, they had that shield mode where you flipped out a handle and they could peg onto other Transformers to kind of act as like this makeshift shield. So they kind of worked in like that whole that whole Battle Master gimmick. Here, I almost want to repeat that, not only so they can act independently and be an accessory for any Transformer, but there's a trick. The Ratbat, the way it's peg folded out and the way that Frenzy or Rumble's folded, you could actually unfold both of them at the same time and mesh them together. So Ratbat became a wing pack, which that kind of inspires like a whole thing. You could do the same with Ravage to give him a wing pack. Ravage could do the same for Frenzy and turn into like a shoulder mounted, like a over the shoulder weapon rack. You could do some pretty cool things with that, and actually make it a play pattern across all 3 of these little figurines. So that's how I'm kind of justifying it, that you could make that a thing. And then I put the Arachnomech too, because it's such a common enemy in the show. I feel like it has to be available somehow, some way. I figure for a Transformer aesthetic thing, they could have individual transformations themselves. Imagine like a 3-pack of Arachnomechs with very simple, like almost like bot level transformation to just flip out into like independent weapons that Transformers could hold. So they kind of act like Battle Masters in that sense. Again, I'm kind of stretching it, but I gave myself this challenge, so I have to stick to the challenge's rules. So that's the core class. Deluxe gets a lot more typical, and we don't really have to debate a whole lot of this. So based on Bumblebee being, always a deluxe and, fitting in for the deluxe price point and size just right, then everyone that's essentially the size of Bumblebee has to end up in the deluxe category as well. That's where you get your Elita 1, your Bombshell, your Swindle, Tarantulas, Breakdown, RC, and Wheeljack. Now the trick here, you might notice by now, I'm not concerning myself with repaints and retools just yet. If this line, presumably the line did well, then they would sprinkle those into future waves to kind of bulk out the line. So we could do Hardtop later on as a Swindle retool. We could do Shrapnel or Bombshell first, and then the opposite later on. Nothing's stopping us from doing that. So this is just kind of like all just the new molds. I'm just focusing on new molds, right? So all the rest, the retools, the repaints, we can do those in year 2, or we can sprinkle them in if there's enough space for the retail shelf. But this seems to work out. Everyone is pretty standard here. And I think it actually provides a decent level of, kind of a decent level of variety here. You got 2 or 3 trucks in there. You've got a couple of like sports cars. You got 2 or 3 sports cars, classic car with RC, a few beast formers. I mean, on a shelf, that would actually work pretty well. I think that balances out the deluxe class about as well as I possibly could think. And the deluxe is pretty easy. I mean, as I was putting this list together, I just kind of realized that, yeah, like if I take Jawbreaker and I put him in the Voyagers because of how bulky he is, then the deluxes work out to about 12 characters that seem to fit in just right. So not a whole lot to discuss there. Deluxes came together perfectly. Voyager is filled with a lot of the mainstays of the Transformer brand, and that's really no surprise. They end up being some of the larger characters. Optimus Prime and Megatron, they are pretty much standards of the Voyager class. You kind of have to do them at that point no matter what. Aside from the fact that's just where they scale best for all the characters that we are discussing in this video. Starscream, again, great retool fodder. His body shape is not terribly different from Nova Storm and Skywarp. That could easily be done later on as well. You could 2-pack him for a store exclusive. Honestly, if I think about it now, 2-packing those would make the most sense in the world. Of all characters that would work in a 2-pack for this, it would definitely be those two because you never see them apart from each other. So I'm not like factoring in store exclusives here, but that's easily doable, I find. Shockwave, the Voyager, only concerns me because his alt mode is so simple. I mean, it's just a walker tank, and I really don't like that alt mode for him. But, you know, it's whatever. He can't be a gun, and they don't want to just do another tank. Thank you, Megatron. But it's what it is. Actually, in this series, that would be fine. There are no tanks. There was Brawl, and Brawl died, so we can't use Brawl anymore. Brawl is like the one character that was named that I didn't put in this list. By the way, I didn't need him. I really didn't need him. And then Soundwave does end up being. Soundwave was almost a deluxe, but he's a little bit too bulky. He's just a little bit shorter than Megatron. I am putting him into Voyager in the same way that Starscream likely ends up there, just the wings and the extra engineering that takes getting him into that into the stealth bomber mode probably pushes him into the Voyager budget. Like I said, I almost threw in Ravage. I almost threw Ravage in as a companion piece, but then I didn't have anyone for the 6th core slot, so that's that one went out the window. I'll tell you what I almost did with Core once we get to the end. There is one other element to this we have to discuss, and then we'll kind of like get into the ideas I had to scrap. The other idea for Voyager that I almost put the Sharkticons in. At one time when Jawbreaker was still a deluxe, I was going to throw in one of the Sharkticons, the other one could be a retool, but then I kind of decided, like, okay, as big and menacing as they were, they didn't transform. And because they're kind of half shark already in their like robot mode, assuming they are Transformers at all, we're just kind of assuming it, they really wouldn't have much transformation to them. It tuck their arms and legs in and sprout fins. That's basically it. They wouldn't do much. They wouldn't be much. So I didn't really feel the need to throw them in. You know, year two, if they're still around, because they didn't die. They didn't die in the finale. They're still there. So if they survive like everyone else, maybe we see them as, maybe we give some kind of alt mode. Maybe they turn into submarines or boats or something. I don't know. But the Voyager class, just putting Jawbreaker in there just kind of fixed all of my layout problems. So I skipped the Sharkticons completely. Now, the leader class. Leader class is actually kind of simple because there's really only 3 characters that actually fit the size that we're going for here. If we exclude Brawl, who, as we said, died quickly. And that's going to be these 3. Grimlock, very obvious. Of course, you're going to do Grimlock at the leader class. He's always one of the biggest Autobots. And yeah, he's absolutely gigantic in the show. It was his size that made me think Jawbreaker needed to be a deluxe. Because in Beast mode, Jawbreaker is so much smaller than Grimlock. So I figure he's going to have one of those transformations that compacts him way down when he's in beast mode. But yeah, Grimlock is obvious. And then Skullcruncher, I just happen to love Skullcruncher, and if they did a leader class, I would be happy forever. So I had to put Skullcruncher in at leader because he's a beast. He's a mammoth Decepticon in that show. Yeah, he doesn't show. I wish he showed more appearances because it's a really cool redesign for him. But hey, I'll take what I can get. You know, at least my Headmaster boy actually does show up. 2 cartoon appearances in a row. Kind of a weird accomplishment. And then we have Mandroid himself, and it's his final form from the finale, the gigantic alien pod thing that he turned into. Now, that one, again, is not going to have much traditional transformation element to it. I would assume it would be similar to, like, the Fallen, from Revenge of the Fallen, I should say. You know, or like the Quintesson they did in Earthrise, where it's just got to be something that's kind of inspired by the robot mode. It's nothing that's too complex to transform, but we'll make up for it in other play features, and we'll kind of get into that here next. Suffice to say, he's the lead villain of the series. You have to throw him into the toy line, and that's about the only body that works for a full-size toy. So he gets the leader class. So here's your layout, and essentially it's every character from the show minus their repaints and retools, which, as we said, could be penciled in later, or they could be a year 2 thing, whatever. But this came out, I think, exceptionally clean. There are a few that are weird at their sizes, however. So we got to address that a little bit. So I came to a decision. At one time, the core class was also going to include Robbie and Mo. And I was going to put them in as figurines that came with Energon armor that snapped onto them, similar and based on the Energon weaponry that they can form with their cyber sleeves. So I was kind of going to go for almost a pretender vibe out of the little figurines of them. But ultimately I decided, no, it has to be like Transformer centric. And then something else occurred to me. I've got so many of these that are kind of the wrong size and don't quite fit the size class they are. So what if we bulked them out? What if I packed in all the humans from the show? Because here's the thing. A lot of these characters are so violent. Like Earthspark, more than any other Transformer series in the past, really focuses on a human cast of characters and how Transformers being on their planet and in their family affects them. And because this is such a family-centric show, storyline-wise, you know, to the point where Vin Diesel is weeping, I think you have to include the human cast. So we scatter them across all of the different figures, either in ones that make sense, like, you know, you're going to put Dorothy in with Megatron. You just can't otherwise. You know, Robbie and Mo get slotted in with the smaller Terrans in the Deluxe class. We put the dad in with the big boy in the Voyager. Schloeder with Optimus is just kind of what's left over, I'll be honest there. But you'll notice I also put in Mandroids, which is going to go in with his leader figure, which I assume the leader figure can have a gimmick where it opens up and there's just this cockpit driver seat thing for Mandroid himself, as well as storage for swappable arms, so Mandroid can have his 2 robot arms in his standard size too. I imagine these little figurines with simple ball joints, you know, like at the torso, at the shoulder, maybe at the neck. Very simple figures that are still in scale, but have just enough movement to call them independent action figures. You know, and if Robbie and Mo wants to come with the weapons their cyber sleeves generate, nice, simple clip-on piece, works for me. And then really just Mandroid has to focus on like actual play elements around the minifigure, just kind of make that figure work a little bit better for the leader price. So, if Hasbro were to actually do a good line for Earthspark, this is how it breaks down. And I would be thrilled. I would be thrilled with this toy line. But I don't see it happening. I miss the days when this stuff was the main line, when the cartoon meant they got all the good figures. Maybe someday. Maybe when they're old enough to be in a Generations line. But for now, that's what I got for you today. Let me know in the comments below if I forgot anyone in the cast or if I put anyone incorrect. I am open to debate on this one. So, thank you all for watching, and as always, I will see you next time.
We parlay with the captain.
You think a werecroc is going to listen to elvish rules of piracy?
Of course it would be
Got
the
it.
freaking elves
Cool.
that invented parlay.
I had to think of a quick replacement for the French.